And outspeak brave Horatius, the captain of the gate. To every man upon this earth death cometh soon or late. And how can man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods?
Aisling cautiously followed her compatriots downstairs and into the bar. The place was a hubbub of activity. To her surprise, nearly all of the flood damage had been repaired, and the staff were preparing to reopen the bar for regular business. A set of 4 long dining tables had been pushed together in the center of the dining area, and 6 men and women were already seated there. As she was guided to her own chair by Callie, Aisling took a moment to look over the committee Callie had mentioned. It was a diverse group, including both a man dressed in a dark business suit and tie, and a woman who wore sweats and a set of headphones, looking as though she was pulled away from her work to be here. All of the committee members spoke to one another in a Scandinavian language that Aisling found slightly familiar. It reminded her of the Northmen who had threatened Ulster Castle. Had that really been less than 2 days ago? The battles against Jarl Ylva felt as though it was a distant memory. Once everyone was seated, several members of staff emerged, serving food and drinks to everyone at the large table. One member of Callie's committee, a bald, middle-aged man dressed in a dark green turtleneck, spoke up. Callie insisted we give you all a chance to eat and recover your strength before we begin, he said. How trusting of you, Mina replied, shooting a glance at Blake, who was seated next to Marisol. The woman, dressed in activewear, picked up on Mina's hostility and spoke in a nasally tone that suggested she was younger than she appeared. Honey, you're in the bar, a place built by like 20 years worth of Paradox readers and writers. There's like more magic, sci-fi tech, and authorial intent built into this place than you can possibly imagine. Trust me when I say, like, you can't pull any surprises on us in here. Blake pointed up at the ceiling. Did you put that there, Callie? Aisling looked up as well. There was a mechanical device attached to one of the rafters. A metal probe stuck out from one side, emitting a blue light. I had to put the anti-psionic weapon somewhere, Callie responded with a shrug. Meanwhile, the committee member got back on track. We were told by Blake about your lack of food options in the worlds you come from, the man continued. I've asked the bar to provide you with a little of everything to start with. Aisling looked down at the plate in front of her. There was meat, cheese, fruits and vegetables, noodles and potatoes, and bread, and so much more. Aisling could, if she squinted her eyes, perceive the strange magic that allowed a grand feast fit for a royal court to be contained within such a small and humble plate. A moment later, she spotted something very interesting. Are those desserts? Aisling asked, pointing. What are they? Blake leaned over. Oh, those are some of the most iconic sweet treats we have here in Michigan. Cherry pie and Mackinac Island fudge. Try it. Blake looked around the table, and a smile came to his face. Oh, nice! It looks like we've got classic Michigan dishes all around. Dig in, everyone. Lord Durham and the folks who run this place have always written better food than me. All of the creations, save for Callie, went through an identical process. They took cautious nibbles of the food in front of them, and then discovered the full palette of flavors that simply did not exist in whatever world they came from. As one, the creations lost their composure and started to eat greedily, as though this was the last meal on Earth. Even Mina lost her train of thought when she was enraptured by a punchki. Sebakira lost herself in a bowl of hanith, a Middle Eastern dish of lamb and rice. Varian sank his or her teeth into an olive burger and did not come up for air, savoring the flavor for as long as possible. Trig attempted to eat a Detroit-style deep dish pizza with a spoon, causing Marisol to have a fit of giggles. Conti simply stared at a pan-fried whitefish served with chopped veggies and tangy sauce. "I can't destroy this," Sebakira breathed. "It's too beautiful." Aisling thought the cherry pie was divine, only to discover the joys of hot fudge and bumpy cake before attempting to wash everything down with a sip from a Boston cooler. Aisling had never even heard of ginger ale before, and it caught her off guard. She coughed and spluttered loudly while Blake offered her a napkin. "I should have seen that one coming," he said. "I never wrote you with a sweet tooth, Aisling, but you really seem to love candy now that you're here." "Being exposed to things in the real world changes us," Callie chimed in. "For instance, I've developed a bit of a dependence on coffee since I got here. There's no caffeine in my world." The turtleneck-wearing member of Callie's committee cleared his throat. "When this is all over, Dakara, we're still having that conversation about the coffee budget. But," he clapped his hands together, "I think right now what we need are introductions and explanations. So," he stood up, "my name is Hurton Forsman. I'm part of the Paradox Development Studios Green." "I know you," Marisol and Blake said at the same time. "We talked at the convention in Berlin," Blake said. "I asked you a question on the forums once," Marisol added. "I think your username was Fearcat." "Yep, Fearcat, that's me," Hurton replied. "Nice to finally meet the face behind Cho-senpai." Aisling raised her eyebrow. "Is this world smaller than mine?" she asked. "How does everyone know each other if you all live in different places?" "Their world isn't smaller, my dear," Hurton replied. "Communication between countries and cities is easier here than what you're accustomed to. It just makes the world seem smaller. That's why my colleague is here." Hurton gestured to the woman dressed up for a day at the gym. She waved a hand meekly and said, "Hey, yeah, I'm Swearlock too. Real name Bella. I'm from PDX Black, and I'm like one of the guys who writes events for Crusader Kings 3. "Swearlock is the newest member of our group," Hurton continued. "We brought her on board after Callie told us about a CK3 character crossing over." "CK3?" Aisling repeated. "Crusader Kings 3, Marisol replied. "It's kind of complicated, but that's the world you come from." Aisling took a deep breath, and then reluctantly put down her knife and fork. She would try to pay attention, but she was already getting lost. "We are the Countermeasures Committee," Hurton said, gesturing to himself and the 5 other people seated near him. 1 year ago, Blake Robinson, through his writing, created a scenario that allowed Callie Dakara to cross the 4th wall and enter the real world. This happened because of story elements we wrote into our game, Stellaris. Callie stood up. "I went to Paradox Interactive, introduced myself, and explained my situation. It took about a month for them to fully grasp the implications, what this could mean. The executives at Paradox realized we had a ticking time bomb on our hands," Hurton said. "That if Blake was able to bring a creation across the 4th wall by accident, then someone could do it deliberately. Callie also raised the possibility of a creation breaking through on their own. This committee was established as, how shall I say, an early warning system and first line of defense." "Defense?" Varian repeated. "You mean like in the military way?" "Not officially," Hurton said. "You see, the senior management and board of directors, that's the leaders of Paradox Interactive, are both completely paralyzed right now. They can't come to any agreement on what to do about these developments. For the past year, they've been having long-running meetings, debating and arguing over the best way to deal with any more creations that come through the 4th wall. Lots of ideas are getting thrown out, and no consensus to be found." Aisling tilted her head and said, "What language are you speaking?" Bella startled, then offered a simplified translation to Aisling. "So he's saying that, because of Blake over there, our king and his court are, preparing for war. But, Like, they don't know anything about the enemy Blake turned loose in their land, so they're, like, confused and don't know what to do. Oh, Aisling replied. Thank God for this woman, one of the committee members said, pointing his thumb at Bella. To say we are confused is an understatement, Hurton said, and this is far worse than any nightmare scenario we planned for. And I haven't even started on the implications for the rest of the forums. We have hundreds of fans writing stories about Paradox games. This catastrophe could repeat itself at any moment. 50 Kroner says it's the Age of Wonders player base is the one that actually gets us all killed, Bella snarked. Speaking of, I've got a question about Aisling Blake. Are we sure she's not from Age of Wonders 4? She looks like she's from that game. Blake did a double take, looking at Aisling, then back at Bella. No, she's an Irish fairy. You know, from, like, the Dreaming Tree. Ever read Cherry's books? Bella narrowed her eyes at Aisling, who blushed and hid her face in her hands. Not wanting to be seen, Aisling shapeshifted into a mouse, curling up underneath her dinner napkin. Unable to see out, she perked up her ears to listen. Her transformation had caused some commotion. Incredible! Hurton gasped. Yo, dude, I've seen that in a movie, Bella said. Blake, did you copy Nemona's powers from the movie? That's so lazy, bro. I told him the same thing, Marisol cut in. I knew people were going to spot it. Aisling felt very embarrassed, not because people were talking about her like this, but by the implication that her powers were copied from someone else. It made her feel even less real than she already did. Who here does not have some sort of supernatural power? Hurton asked. There was a rustle as a few hands were raised. Good God, Hurton breathed. Okay, we're starting to get a handle on the situation here. Before he could finish his sentence, Callie interrupted. Sir, I think you've missed the most important part of my report. Malum and his team control a series of gateways on the other side of the fourth wall, the broken gates Blake wrote about in his last Stellaris story. That means our enemy has a lot of control over where and when they can cross the fourth wall. That explains a few things, Hurton grumbled. Blake, 2 of your characters were in the solarium, but when the moderators tried to apprehend them, they escaped through some kind of portal. Aisling poked her snout out from under the napkin, trying to see Blake's face. He looked very worried. Moderators? Blake repeated. Well, Hurton fumbled with his words. Bella cut across him and blurted out, one of the broads was naked, like wearing a grass skirt and nothing else. Varian, Trig, and Marisol all let out immature snickers and giggles. Vetsu Kealoa, Blake said. She's got stealth powers. She was probably sneaking around with Akira. It sounds like something I would write. Marisol extended her hand across the table, holding it next to where Aisling was hiding. Aisling sniffed Marisol's fingertip for a moment, then cautiously clambered into Marisol's palm. Slowly, Marisol cupped her hands together, creating a little bowl shape for Aisling to peer out of. Looking up, Aisling saw that Marisol was carrying her close to her own chest. Hurton stood up. For everyone's safety, we're going to relocate all of you to Paradox headquarters in Stockholm. Blake and Marisol both started to protest, but Hurton gave them a very stern look. The 2 of you should know by now that you're in way over your head. Blake, we're going to send your father home just as soon as we've verified it's safe to do so. Callie has got her people outside the bar, making sure no one follows. He never finished his sentence. At that moment, the 2-way radio on Callie's belt crackled, and a transmission began to play. Takara, we've got a creation approaching the bar. Adult female, Caucasian, red dress, blue hair, unarmed. Distance 200 meters. Please advise. Over. Callie pushed her chair back and stood. Suddenly, she looked very much like the soldier Blake had written her to be. This meeting's over, Callie said. Committee, into the solarium. Creations, upstairs. I want guards in the hallway. Creators, into the inkwell. Now.